Everything's Cleaner in Texas, the show where we spotlight the people, processes, and products that are helping Texas clean freaks fight dirty better. From hospital sterilization teams to cutting-edge technology, from deep cleaning secrets to industry game changers, if it's making Texas fight dirty, we're going to talk about it on this show. My name's Hank Balch, alongside Dusty Glass, and every episode we'll be diving deep with the experts, innovators, and frontline fighters who are setting the gold standard for cleanliness across the Lone Star State. Because in Texas, we don't just fight dirty, we do it big. So grab your boots, buckle up, it's time to get clean. Hey there, Sterile Processing Universe. My name's Hank Balch. You are listening to Everything's Cleaner in Texas, the podcast for the Houston Sterile Processing Professionals Alliance, based out of none other than Houston, Texas, and hosted on the Beyond Clean Sterile Processing Network. Want to give a shout out to our launch sponsor here for Season 1, Steris IMS. Thank you guys for believing in us and the vision for the show and supporting the future, the past, and the present of sterile processing in the state of Texas and around the world. All right, on today's episode, we're going to be talking to Kurt Van Sickel, the program director and career coach at Good Works Collective. And we've got Dusty Glass back in studio with us as always, sterile processing manager at Memorial Hermann Health. And guys, I guess before we get into it, welcome to the show today, both of you.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
So Kurt, maybe let's start with you. Give a little introduction to your background and what brings you into the sphere of sterile processing. How did you stumble onto a podcast about sterile processing of all things?
Yeah, it's a real honor to be here, Hank. I am the program director and career coach for Good Works Collective. We're a recently launched nonprofit here in Houston, and we're located real close to the Med Center. And really the goal of our program and our organization is to upskill people. And we have a personal development class that's 6 weeks long. And then all of our leaders, our students, choose a career track. And one of the career tracks that is hot right now is sterile processing. So we've got people doing the CRCST training. That's kind of how I got into it. I heard it. We're looking for careers that can train within 3 to 4 months and get people into a great career that has growth, and sterile processing fits those criteria very well. So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're going to dig into some of your comments here. But before we do, just in case someone is tuning in and this is your first episode in this series, Dusty, would you just give a quick thumbnail about who you are too? But if you want to know more about Dusty's story, go back to episode 1. We kick it off with a deep dive. You'll learn a lot about his background, why he's passionate about this space. But yeah, Dusty, what's your story in a nutshell?
Yeah, in a nutshell, pretty much started off as a combat medic in the Army. Kind of got into sterile processing when I was deployed in Jordan and Kuwait and Afghanistan, and really wanted to find something that was like that in the civilian side. Kind of got hooked on being a sterile processing technician, and I've loved it ever since I've started it. And finding and affecting folks' lives from behind the scenes is I feel like a calling for me. So 12, 13 years later, here we are.
Yeah, we kind of joked around in episode 1, and Kurt, this kind of goes back to your introduction a little bit. But, folks don't just wake up one morning when they're 17 and like, you know what? I think in about 5 or 10 years, I want to be on a podcast about sterile processing, or, 5 or 10 years, I want to be managing a sterile processing department. Like when you're 17, that's not necessarily one of those jobs historically that's been on people's radar. I say that though, knowing that is also shifting. I know you're not necessarily talking about the high school age space, but there are a growing number of healthcare career high schools out there today that have sterile processing as a track. So that is changing, and that's terrific because we've got to get that pipeline. But you mentioned a term, Kurt, that I kind of want to start the definition here, you said upskilling, and that's a word that's been thrown out quite a bit over the last, 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years now, just across the country as technology changes, as the job market shifts. But what is upskilling? And, what role does it play maybe in this context of the sterile processing conversation that we're talking about today?
Upskilling is taking somebody who has kind of maybe medium to low level skills in a lot of times in a career that doesn't have that much of a advancement track, and giving them the keys to step on to that next level. We have people in our program who might be unlicensed healthcare professionals doing home health. So they're familiar with a little bit of the healthcare space, but getting somebody into the sterile processing world, it differentiates themselves from the general populace of entry-level healthcare people, and gives them something to be able to have a definitive track that's going to lead to personal and professional growth, increase in pay, those types of things. So it's really getting the people the keys to start driving that car across country in their career.
Yeah, that pays a huge topic. If we got time, maybe we'll talk about that some more on this episode. If not, we're definitely going to bring up compensation at some point on this show. But Dusty, one of the challenges in the seat of the sterile processing manager is, looking at these resumes. Because to Kurt's point, sterile processing is one of those jobs historically that the barrier to entry is low. It's not like you got to go to med school, or you don't got to go to nursing school. You don't have to have a particular degree to get in. And yet it is a clinical role, and there is career progression. There is opportunity for growth. So you're getting applications from a wide spectrum of folks and backgrounds and education and whatnot. And so when you're sitting there looking at it from the perspective of the manager, what kind of skills and background are you looking for that you've seen over time comes in clutch in that training phase, that orientation phase, but importantly, in hiring the kinds of people that stay in this career for the long term?
Yeah, Hank, I really like to try to dive into the person in an interview. You only have about 10 or 15 minutes, to really find out, is this person going to be a good hire for us? Are they going to, complement the current culture that we have in the department? And are they going to be able to meet the needs of the department? So for me personally, I do feel like I can teach anyone to be a sterile processing technician. Doing this for as long as I've been doing it, and of course to be married to my beautiful wife who is a teacher, I steal a lot of her things to be able to really mold some sterile processing technicians. But what I can't teach people is to be how to be good people, good humans, and care about others, have those kind of a good moral compass, and then also to be moldable, right? To be teachable, to be pliable, to be able to take, constructive criticism. So we really kind of approach our questions to find out and probe those areas of a technician to kind of find out, are they willing to learn in an ever-changing environment that we're going to, in 3 months, we're going to ask you to completely change kind of how we're doing, the role. And that is kind of the environment we live in sterile processing, with the advancements of medical devices changing every day. We need people who are willing to change and mold and say, okay, I understand the foundational, right, things of of making an instrument sterile. I also can change and mold based on what the manufacturer is going to change, and say, hey, I need you to add maybe these 3 or 4 tasks to your current processes.
Right. Yeah, it's not a hypothetical, hey, there could be some changes that happen in the next 3 months. How do you respond to that? It's, this thing is guaranteed to change, depending on the manufacturers, to your point, or depending on the new guidelines that are coming down, or the changes in regulatory, or just the changes in the process at the tray level. We're going to add new instruments in the tray that weren't there last week, and now they're going to be there this week. So can you hang with that? Kurt, Dusty brought up an important point, though, in the kinds of folks that he has seen be successful over time, at least in his perspective, is not necessarily kind of stuff that you can see on the resume. So knowing that as a career coach, how do you navigate these channels, right? Because the resume, I'm assuming, is what gets people that second look, because you got to get past that in order to get into the interview process where Dusty's asking them these behavioral-based questions and whatnot. So where's the balance, and how do you coach people through that?
So one of the big things that about the two candidates that we have that are going into sterile processing, both of them done their homework. They have talked to people that they know that are in sterile processing. They've kind of looked throughout their network and said, hey, I know somebody, let me go talk to them. So they've done a little bit of homework. When they went through the tour that we did with Dusty, one was last week and the week before, they were both fired up. And so having known somebody who's done it, they've done their homework at least a little bit there, getting to see it, got them excited. And what our leaders, we call our students leaders, we've got them starting The Ideal Team Player, which is a book by Patrick Lencioni from the Table Group. It's about being humble, hungry, and smart. And that smart aspect is emotional intelligence. So that kind of mentality, when you're hungry, you're looking for something you're more to do. You're not saying, hey, my area is clean. I'm not going to be asking about, helping out somewhere else. Hungry is learning, looking to learn more. Humility is, there's no part of this process that I'm too good to do. Everybody on the team is treating them as equals. And then the emotional intelligence, just seeing the team working seamlessly there at Memorial Hermann on the two visits that I've had there. It's definitely something that's high intensity. And if you're not able to work together as a team, you're not going to be able to survive. So those are the things that we're looking for and that we're teaching to is, the humble, hungry, and smart for the ideal team player.
So, Dusty mentioned that he can teach the technical side of sterile processing, but what he can't teach is exactly what you were just describing, Kurt, the hungry, the humble, and the smart. So how do you guys go about that as a career development group? How are you addressing, I think you told me before we started recording, that soft skill category here of the candidate or the leader that you're preparing, for these roles? Because that's, if you're coming in fresh, in your background, nature versus nurture, right? You got a piece of raw material in front of you that may not be naturally humble or hungry or smart or what have you. So, how are you taking that intake and then preparing that?
We have the first 6 weeks of our program is called personal development. And we actually spend 4 weeks on self-identity. And that starts with how you're brought up. Conflict resolution is a big deal in the workplace. And I'd say 95 to 100% of people leave jobs because of some conflict that they had in the workplace. And that, when we talk about identity development, you look back to how you were raised and how you watched your parents handle conflict. And if you see that your mom bottled up conflict or your dad bottled up conflict and then never talked about it, shoved it up under the rug, that might be the reason why you do that. Or in a professional environment, if you don't address those uncomfortable conversations or say, hey, I noticed this, it doesn't work. So we start, with self-identity and looking at how you were raised and to be able to figure out the conflict resolution piece. So we focus on conflict resolution. We have communication. We have everybody given a small presentation in their first 6 weeks. We share each other's life stories with each other. And those types of things help to build a cohesive team and help to break down walls and be vulnerable with each other. So ultimately, in a cohesive team, on the sterile processing floor, having relationships with the people in your group is going to help you be able to enjoy the time that you're spending together. So that's really what we spend 6 weeks doing. Soft skill training and conflict resolution, communication are the main focuses.
Wow. Somebody sitting there, from the manager perspective, thinking like, man, I would have loved to put every single member of my staff through that kind of training, like regardless of if they've been with me forever or not, but I think if you haven't gone through that process that Kurt's talking about, Dusty, of looking at your own background, like how you ended up to where you are, like what makes you happy, what makes you angry, and how you react to those situations. Like you were just alluding to, Dusty, the change that you have to do in sterile processing, but the stress is a real factor. So in your experience, kind of speak to that new hire phase. In your experience, how have you seen either new hires be successful or maybe unsuccessful in managing or reacting to the stress of sterile processing? That's something like you can tell them when you're interviewing, it's going to be a stressful job, but then there's something else that clicks in that you just can't tell them in the interview until they actually experience it themselves.
I call it the wild eyes. And I feel like every technician goes through the wild eyes phase. And the wild eyes is essentially that moment you realize it's like this is why I'm here, right? And it's like a connection or a light bulb moment where they have to connect all of these dots, right? They have to draw the lines and they connect them together to realize, okay, whether it's conflict resolution, whether it's productivity, whether it's remembering IFUs, whether it's remembering just showing up on time. It's different for every technician. Every technician, I feel like, has their own struggle with whatever it is, depending on, what Kurt said, how they were raised and the things that they went through, their personal story, right? And that matters, and it does. And that's kind of really why we like to partner with these, community programs that are really cutting edge. How many other hospitals have the opportunity to work with wonderful programs like Kurt is the director of? It's really special to have Kurt and his team come in to the facility and be able to see those things happening in real time and be able to see the cohesion and the teamwork in real life. When we perform these tours, these were in the middle of 120 case volume days. Turnovers were actively happening. Life-saving procedures were happening every moment. And there was a sterile processing technician behind each and every one of those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of wild eyes if you looked around the room, probably, in those moments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it's really unique, I think, our field. And for us, I feel like we have to carry that baton to really push forward our career path for others to be able to see, to say, hey, I want you to see the great works that we're doing here. I want you to see the great communication. I want you to see all of the great training, education. And the thing is that they're going to fail. They're going to fail. They're going to make mistakes, but they're going to learn from those mistakes. And I think that is what a lot of people forget, is that you're human. Scale it back just a little bit. You're human. You're going to have to learn from your mistakes. And I think that is really what really defines a strong sterile processing technician and someone who says, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe they're not willing to learn from those mistakes that they've made and grow and get better from them. And they receive from them.
And yeah, I think there's multiple, signs that maybe this job's not for you. And, that's one of them, right? Like if you don't want to learn, if you don't want to change, if you don't want to hang with the change in general that we were describing earlier. But yeah, like I've seen a lot of folks, and I think this is, It's a gift, not to get off topic, but this is a gift that a good manager will give to technicians early on in their careers if this ain't the place for them. There's a lot of other industries out there. If you care about people in healthcare, if you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, there's a lot of things you can do besides sterile processing. The role's not for everybody. And the quicker that you can figure that out as a technician personally, but also as a manager to coach your folks, not to just, get them off the bus, kick them the curb as quick as you can. Like a good manager is going to find opportunity, like see skills, give referrals, recommendations, and like make sure that folks find the right bus to get on. But it does no one any good to see those warning signs that you were just talking about, Dusty, to completely ignore them if that's you, or if it's the leader that's in charge of you and just say, well, we're just going to let you go because I don't want to deal with the situation. It helps everyone, to deal with that and direct you. All right, back on topic here. I want to come back to Kurt in a second, but I'm going to come back to you first, Dusty. One of the conversations here today and the vision for what Kurt's team does at Good Works Collective is upskill into careers that have growth potential. That was something that Kurt mentioned at the beginning of the show. So this is not just hey, get hired and you have no growth potential beyond a Tech 1 for the rest of your life. It's just Tech 1 and that's it. Now, and I always want to take moments to say this, if you want to be a Tech 1 for the rest of your life, God bless you. We need great, hard-working Tech 1s that want to put your head down and just crank it. And there's a huge opportunity there to serve the patient and the department and your team to be a fantastic Tech 1. However, Dusty, what other opportunities are there besides the Tech 1 in this industry? What does growth and career advancement look like for folks?
Well, Hank, I think that's what I drive all the time, actually, is that a lot of folks don't realize how long the branches are of sterile processing in that career growth. And obviously it depends on your health system, of course. Some health systems, they need a little bit of work, but typically you're going to see from a Tech 1, you're going to see Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3. From Tech 3, you're gonna start moving into that Tech 4 once you get into leadership. So that's going to be either your team lead, your supervisor. You're also going to see some liaison positions, and so what those are essentially the folks who are they work in between the OR and sterile processing. So they deal with your turnovers, they're dealing with holes in trays, they're dealing with physician preferences, they're dealing with all of those things. A sterile processing technician, we want to kind of keep that from them so that they can focus on productivity alone. They can pump out those trays and get those ready to go, while also keeping your customer service at a peak level, right? From just there, right, you start to add certifications as you go, right? So typically you want to see your certified instrument specialist when you get up to your Tech 3. Depending if you want to go, you can go into GI. That's a whole other realm and its own thing in and of itself. For high-level disinfection, that's your certified endoscope reprocessor. But let's say you want to say, hey, you know what? I'm really liking this. I want to be in sterile processing. I want to be in leadership. Well, that's what your certified healthcare leader is for. You can start to get that experience with your lead or supervisor roles. And then you have manager 1, manager 2. And then, like I said, it's all depending on your facility, how large your health system is. But sterile processing goes up all the way to regional directors, even AVPs. You can be an associate vice president of sterile processing, depending on how large your health system is. So really, you could be in the executive suite if you want to dedicate into sterile processing. So for me, then what I tell all my technicians, all my new hires, all my folks that are like, hey, why sterile processing? Why even think about it? I kind of guide them to say, what other opportunities could you be an executive in? You could be an executive in sterile processing. You could be a director. You could be a regional director. There's just so many different avenues depending on your personality, how you deal. with folks, maybe, not everybody is cut out for management, but there's so many different other avenues that you could go down. Maybe you're really great at dealing with the OR, and that's something that a liaison would be perfect for, right? You could be a Tech 4 with plenty of growth to go down that route.
Yeah, just add in a couple more, there's educator roles, there's quality assurance managers out there. If you're into data, some facilities have like database specialists to deal with the tracking system. And then there's a whole other world on the vendor side. If you're into chemicals, if you want to do education as a vendor, if you like talking to people and selling them stuff. So there's a whole world built around this Tech 1 role, Kurt, that you're introducing your leaders through as you're bringing them through your training program. So I know it sounds like your program is pretty new in the life cycle of bringing folks through, but what has been the conversation just from y'all's side? Why sterile processing even in your program to begin with? Maybe let's start there. And then number two, what has been the feedback for the folks that are kind of starting to go through this program so far? And I know you've had the tours as well.
Yeah, so we are right next to, we're like a mile away from the largest medical center in the world. So more than half of the folks that are in our program have chosen to do medical tracks, medical coding and billing, certified clinical medical assistant, certified nurse aide, sterile processing. And we're working with the United States Career Institute, which is an online training program that will have our leaders come in person to do that together for peer accountability and staff accountability. So people will have them set at a certain target, still at your own pace, but we'll say, hey, you got to get through chapters 1 through 4 in the first week, 4 through 8 in the second week, that kind of thing to keep the pace. But really, sterile processing was brought up, as a hot career that was in high demand. And that's what got us, piqued our curiosity. In our second class of students that we started in September during the recruiting process, I had a lot of questions about sterile processing from people that, they said, oh, I honestly had people, we do Facebook ads. So we put about half the seats in our class are referrals from partner organizations in the area. And then we run in Facebook ads, and I'm giving them my spiel, and they say, hey, do you have sterile processing? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. We're going to be training with the United States Career Institute. And that is how the recruiting process. So people out there know. And I say, I ask, how do you know about sterile processing? Oh, well, my daughter's friend has been doing it for 3 years, and she's making, $25 an hour or something like that, $30 an hour. And that, so I'm really interested. So the people out there are starting to hear about the opportunities in sterile processing. So that's one of the reasons that we've been offering, is because it's a high demand role. I think, as we're talking in this specific class, a cohort of students, we've got 2, like I said, that are going that direction. One of them has said his goal right now is to get a year or 2 under his belt and go off and being a travel tech, and the opportunities to be able to see different parts of the country and be a travel tech and make a premium on the wage is something that's really exciting for him. I've got a woman that's going to be doing the CRCST training. She wants her long-term goal, 5-year plan, is to be a surgical technician. And, I was talking to a friend this afternoon who's an anesthesiologist, and he said, a lot of times a surgical tech gets pigeonholed because they only know one section. They only know how to do one surgery. And ultimately, if you're going through it as a sterile processing tech, what Dusty says, the best surgical techs, the best scrub techs are sterile processing technicians. You learn every single, tray and tool out there, right? And so you're able to be a incredible asset to the surgical team at your hospital system, because you are able to say, hey, I know it all. Not to say I'm a know-it-all, but hey, I know all of the tools out there. And I'm able to cross train into other avenues. So that was something that was exciting for me to, talking to these two specific leaders, that they've already looked at the path out there and they've seen that there's great opportunities for them to do. And that's something that gets me excited too.
Yeah, that's great. Tell your traveler guy, try to do about 2 years. There's companies out there that take you 1 year in, start traveling, but the best for the industry is to get a little bit more experience, because you want to be up in that premium tier productivity, because that's what you're getting paid for. Once you start traveling, you start making that high money. And so I can tell you, as a manager who hires travelers, I want them coming in like that should be the A team, right? Like, that's New York Yankees that you're bringing in. So, God bless these young ones that want to get out and, go start making that bigger money, but put a little bit more time in maybe than just a year. This is my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of the show or anything, but just, take that for what it's worth. But yeah, that is a lot of folks, to your point, are seeing that travel opportunity. If you're flexible and you want to see the world, what better way to go and do that than get paid to do a job that you love? It's got career growth. You can grow as a traveler into a traveling sterile processing supervisor and manager and director. And the career growth continues growing if you're able to travel the world like that too. So yeah, as we get to a wrap here, let me start with you, Kurt. I know you said that you put ads out on Facebook and such, and so it sounds like y'all do have some kind of recruitment pipeline or what have you. But what kind of candidates do you look for in coming into your program? And if there's folks out there that want to learn more about what you do and get involved or reach out to you, what's the best way to get some more information?
Our program looks for people with grit and teachability. Those are the two things that we're looking for the most, is somebody that's going to be able to push past those roadblocks. We do. Dusty mentioned the getting there on time. We have our program with the 6 weeks. We have a maximum of 3 lates or tardies, and 902 is late. And so all the candidates that come through our program are have pushed through a lot of roadblocks, literal roadblocks, getting through the Houston traffic, and
yeah. That's no joke.
Those, anything else that's happening in life, juggling kids and hey, my kid's sick today is not an excused absence. I have a doctor's appointment. It's not an excused absence. That we have our classes Monday through Thursday, and doctor's appointment should be scheduled for Friday. Those things, being able to be creative and teaching people how to be reliable. Ultimately, we will be recruiting for another class of 25 to 30 leaders for February, late February, early March will be our next class start date. It's goodworkscollective.us is our website. And it's always great to follow up with a phone call, say, hey, did you get my application? And I'm really excited about your program. That gets you to the top of the list. I might not be checking and following up with applications every single day during personal development class and during skill track. But if you make a phone call and that demonstrates to me that you're already pushing through some roadblocks, you follow back up. That's kind of our recruiting process. Will start, more officially in December and January, but we're always taking applications.
Okay. And yeah, depending on when folks are listening to the show, this is the fall of 2024. So, depending on what schedule it is, if you're listening in June or whatever, probably the best case scenario is to reach out through the website like Kurt mentioned. And we'll put Kurt's email address in the show notes too, just in case folks want to email you direct, Kurt. Dusty, vision for this show obviously is to support the Houston chapter and everything that's going on down in the greater Houston area, as well as the broader state of Texas. For anybody who's not already a member of the chapter or plugged in with your network, how can folks learn more about what's happening down in Houston?
Yeah, absolutely, Hank. www.hsppachapter.com is our website. You can always reach out to us there. That has our membership portal, that has our contact information. You can also find us on the HSPA website. If you are just getting certified, you can go on to Texas, click your Houston area, and they will also pull up our website and all of our information there as well. Really, for the chapter and working with the Good Works Collective, it's all about expanding that sterile processing network, expanding our career path, expanding, that job network, and just really showing everybody out there, hey, you can dream to be a doctor, lawyer, all those kind of things as well, but let's throw sterile processing in there as well.
Yeah, I think both you guys will agree. What they told us growing up, it's not what you know, it's who you know. In some situations, that networking piece, we cannot overvalue it, especially in the industry as tight-knit as sterile processing. So getting plugged into the chapter events, whether or not you're already certified, doesn't matter. Whether or not you're already working in SPD, doesn't matter. If you want to come and learn and meet sterile processing folks and start that process of getting plugged in and, networking with folks, come on down, tune into the show. You already listened to this episode, obviously, but yeah, go to the website, go to the events, make some phone calls or emails, and let's learn how and continue to teach how to fight dirty better. As we wrap here, Dusty and Kurt, I really want to thank you for a terrific interview. We just scratched the surface of career development opportunities and resources out there. We might even have you back, Kurt, for like a round 2 once maybe this first cohort makes it through the process, and then we can follow up and maybe even have one of them join us next time. But yeah, really appreciate you coming on the show today.
No, great. Thanks, Hank. Thanks, Dusty.
And Dusty, yeah, thank you as well, sir.
Absolutely, Hank. As always, thank you for the invite, and thank you for guiding us through this journey. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, you've been listening to Everything's Cleaner in Texas, the podcast of the Houston Sterile Processing Professionals Alliance. It's hosted on the Beyond Clean Network. I'm one of your hosts, Hank Balch, and we want to thank you again for everything that you're doing to support the industry by tuning into podcasts like this. But just like Kurt brought up in the interview, for telling your friends and family what you do, what you love about this career, for encouraging that younger generation, but not just like young in age, that generation who's maybe gone through a job change. And now they're like, okay, what do I do now? And if they fit that category that Kurt described, that they could get some upskilling to equip them to be competitive in the job market for these sterile processing roles. We'll take you. All ages, doesn't matter. All backgrounds, doesn't matter. As long as you got the grit, that's what's going to make you or break you in this industry. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. Hope you hang around and enjoy the rest of this series. And as we tell you each and every week here at Beyond Clean, keep fighting dirty. All right. If you loved today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review, because this fight against bioburden is as big as Texas. If you've got a sterile processing tip, story, or even product that's making it easier for Texas clean freaks to fight dirty, we want to hear about it. Connect with us on social media, anywhere you find Beyond Clean. That's Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. Until next time, lasso up those dirty trays and saddle up those sterilizers, because we're about to show the world why everything's cleaner in Texas.